Hi, Ollie. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Marcos. Good to see you. Hi, everyone.
Likewise, likewise. Okay, so what we're doing one of our very short Q&A videos again today, and this wasn't so much a question as a comment under one of our previous Q&A videos, which is, are the lungs under Gemini or Cancer? And this was somebody asking, can you guys tell me my health condition if I give you my birth date, birth time, and location of birth, which is an entirely reasonable question. I think I may have lost as a subscriber because I noticed our subscriber count went down by one after I answered this, because I basically said we don't do free consultations on the channel, I'm afraid. Also, the short answer is no, because accurate astrology requires context. This will be a good future discussion topic, though, so thank you for this question. So the implicit question in that is what they've asked, really. And so I'm just to abstract it from their inquiry, can you tell a health condition if somebody just gives you their birth date, birth time, and location of birth? So this is an interesting one for various reasons. So I just thought we'd spend 10 minutes on that. I mean,
Very interesting.
any preliminary thoughts on that, Ollie?
Well, my preliminary thought is, well, pretty much we don't have to, as you say, we don't have the context. So what we can tell from the chart is trends. Like this person has weaknesses in this area, strengths in this area, and you can do timings. This is a time this person should be looking out for X, Y, and Z, etc. But um, everybody's unique because everyone has lived their life. And so we don't know where they are now in their life. And so, like anything, if you were doing, psychological astrology, we can give trends. This person is likely to be this, likely to be that. But without the context of what they're actually doing at the moment, how they feel, you can't to a an accuracy that would be ethical, start giving general health advice, specific health advice. I mean, all one could probably do is say, you have a weakness in this area.
Mm.
Um, Possibly when Mars, for instance, gets around to this, you should look out for acute conditions affecting your knees or something. But even that, it might not be the knees, it might be the feet or something, because astrology is complicated and multifaceted, and it's not simple. It's actually very, very accurate. And it sounds like, well, I've given them my birth coordinates, but there's a lot more to it than that. So
Yep.
that's how I would initially answer it off the cuff. Mark,
Okay, a hundred percent agree with all of that, Ollie. Actually, I mean, as unsurprising because we've worked together for a while now, so I mean, it's not necessarily a surprise to either of us. But yeah, 100%. Because as you know, it's a phrase of mine that I repeat ad nauseam. Probably, astrology is a context dependent art. It is fully context dependent, and it is a conceit of astrologers throughout the ages, not just now. That if I am given this astrological data, I can tell you exactly what's going on in absence of context. This has been repeatedly disproven, both through examples of, let's say, astrological overreach, which has sometimes led to astrologers being beheaded for getting predictions wrong, but also in modern times with scientific experiments of astrology, like with matching experiments, for example, which astrologers repeatedly prove over and over again that in the absence of a real life client with a real life situation, astrologers cannot accurately match a chart to abstracted information about a made up person, or no matter how well they think they can read the chart. What this tell And as I often say, the example I often give is a chart in absentia can be the chart of a toaster or a building or a puppy or whatever. So, and at any one time, and even if we know it's a chart of a human, which obviously we would do in this case, in particularly in major cities at any one time, you've got maybe a few hundred, maybe 1,000 humans being born in the same sort of hour. And even with a few minutes of each other, you might have a whole slew. There's maybe 10 people being born in a major city. So essentially, you have 10 time twins. And they can all have radically different lives. And traditional astrologers recognize this. Lily would talk about it's not to be expected that I'm paraphrasing radically, but he would say something like, it's not to be expected that a king and a pauper with the same directions, meaning the same transits or perfections or timing stuff going on in the sky, at any one time would have the same experience. So he was talking about primary directions, which are a timing technique, but a similar thing would apply to transits or whatever, meaning that if a king and a homeless person or somebody super rich and somebody with nothing at all had the same chart, they might have a sort of a good day on the same sorts of days and a bad day on the same sorts of days and whatever, but a good day to one and a good day to another would look radically different. A good day for somebody living on the street might be somebody gives them, 50 quid note and like maybe suggests a place where they could live. And a good day for the king might be that they, I don't know, acquire a new kingdom and like billions of quid or something. Do you know what I mean? Whatever. It's context dependent from that point of view. So to get to the specifics of that inquiry, I think, as you said, Ollie, it's possible to, and I do this if as a professional astrologer, if people sort of want me to do a health reading, I would look at susceptibilities in a natal chart. But the first thing I do before I do that, the first thing is take at least a brief medical history. I want to know what's going on with them in their health now. I want to know any major medical history they've got, just major stuff, and any medications that they're taking, because that will give me at least, okay, what's your current health issues and any big stuff that's gone on in the past. I don't necessarily do a full clinical history. I don't necessarily do a family history or anything like that, but I at least want to know major medical history and a bit of context before I sally forth and try and do the medical stuff in the chart. And the reason for that, that's not cheating, that's context. It's as I say, a chart in and of itself is just a bunch of random astronomical data, and it's symbolically interpreted only when you plug it in to a context, that context being the individual human life. That's when the divination comes alive. So you could look at a chart, say somebody gave birth date and whatever, and say, okay, it's possible that you have these susceptibilities, that these are just generic. Let's say you're a Virgo rising and you have Aquarius on the cusp of the sixth house, then I might go, okay, well, Virgo rising, maybe there might be some more issues in the Virgo area, because that could be a sensitized area, particularly if they also had moon in Virgo as well, that would double sensitize that. So there might be more issues generally with gallbladder or small intestines or pancreas. And if Aquarius or six, maybe there's issues with the calves or lower legs or circulation of the blood, possibly. But that's just what you look at the positions of the planets and so you can find all this information in the chart. But the thing which distinguishes one thing from another is actually the case. So astrology is essentially, all of this to say, astrology is essentially what am I looking for? I can't think of the word right now. It's a conversational art. It's a back and forth. The word isn't coming to me, but it's an interpretive art which it's like a lens that enables you to focus things in once you've got the context. But so once you've got the context clue, so say I've got these symptoms, I've got this going on, and I have these issues in my family. Then you can look at the birth chart and go, right. And so there's a second issue. So then you can look at the birth chart and look at the context in the chart and go, right, given what you've just told me about you having these symptoms and these things in your family, already as a herbalist, we'd already be thinking about, okay, well, it could be this, this, or this. And then when you look at the chart will give you those clues to sort of push you more towards one area and go, okay, it looks like this might be the issue. And then where the astrology gets really interesting is it won't just tell you what's going on. It might give you a few context clues as to why. Like, okay, so you've got this difficult planet in your fourth house, and you're, like, say, Mars conjunct Moon in the fourth house, and you're getting a lot of heartburn. Did you grow up in a really, like, a home with a load of domestic turbulence? Was there a lot of domestic violence at home, or did your house burn down, or whatever it is? There's some Sun Mars in the fourth house thing, and there's various permutations of that. So what astrology ultimately is in practice, particularly medical astrology, for me, is a clue finding system. It enables you to refract real life information and extrapolate clues when given a bit of context. And the second thing I wanted to go with that, and this is a very important question. The questioner here was asking about a birth chart. Now, and this is, and you know where I'm going with this, Ollie. This is like the difference between Right. Okay. I mean, do you want to go there? Because it's like the
Well,
difference between birth
I
chart
was
and
saying, I mean, as medical astrologers, Marcos and I are much, much more likely to use horary charts dated to the start of the session, or ideally even better, when the patient, traditionally it'd be a decumbiture chart, which would be a horary taken when the patient actually
yeah.
got ill. Um, as a lot of the chronic conditions we have to deal with, we tend to time them to the start of the consultation. Now, the advantage of this is twofold. One, that a lot of people don't know their exact time of birth. So you might say, oh, I was born at 7:30. That's what your mum told you. But your mum, you might easily be born at 27:21. She probably wasn't looking at her watch as she was pushing you out, sort of thing. Um, and so it's really not unusual that, and I would say probably most people don't know their exact birth time, and people spend hours rectifying charts, etc. And because of astrological logic, and it's difficult to get your head by, every moment is as important as every other moment. So the horary astrology taken at the time, either when you got ill or at the start of a consultation, is just as accurate, particularly specific to the problem you're asking about.
Yeah.
But obviously, your birth chart is everything in your life. This is a specific question about why you come, what ails you, sort of thing. So actually, it's far more accurate. And
Yes.
go on, Marcus.
Well, I was going to agree with all of that and just and say for me the birth chart is I would default to a birth chart if it was a lifelong condition or something which was very, very genetic or heritable or very long lasting. It was something that was, so some issues are in the chart. If somebody has a massive family history of cardiovascular disease and there's a Sun square Mars or whatever in the sixth house in the chart or whatever, and so and they have a lot of, so you can use the birth chart, but as you were just saying, Ollie, in a specific situation you've always got that decumbiture chart. You use the word horary, which means a chart of a question, which is, yeah, I know what you're thinking of. You're thinking there isn't really an English word for it. The nearest is the one we nicked from the Greek called a katarchic chart, which means
Exactly. I
that
mean, it's just
of a moment, the chart of a
really the
moment in
chart
time.
at the moment is
It's
what
the
I,
same rules of interpretation as horary. Horary is like you ask a question. A katarchic chart is the chart of a moment in time, like the beginning of a consultation between yourself and a practitioner about that issue, or when you receive some medical times, or the time of an accident, or whatever. It's a significant moment in the illness or your attempt to intervene in it. But the point there is, absolutely, we would for a lot of illnesses, both you and I think would almost prefer the katarchic horary decumbiture chart, whatever, the chart of the moment, the chart that refers to this specific circumstance. And most often we're using consultation charts because we always have that time, and B, very often people don't have the time when they fell ill. If somebody has an exact time when they were admitted to hospital or collapsed or got a very significant test result that's before when we see them, we would use that. But otherwise, you're often using the start time, the exact start time of the first consultation you have with that person, because that event chart will describe the specific circumstances around that consultation and around that conversation, around that medical event. And then if you have the birth chart, Culpeper said, if you have the birth chart, you shall not err, which is very confident of him, I must say. But I mean, the point he's making is that having the birth chart, because it gives you a lot of context about the person's constitution in general, and you can put it side by side with that event chart and help. It give you information about how serious this is, to that person, or how not. So it can give you lots of extra information. But I would only default to preferring to only use the birth chart only if, as I say, it's a lifelong condition or something that was very heritable, like a genetic disorder or something. Because, as you said, Ollie, it's the birth chart is the chart of an entire freaking lifetime. There's a whole lifetime's worth of possibilities in that chart.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like one other thing I'd like to say on, which is an analogy. I can't remember where I read it, but classically, any astrological chart is effectively made up of the four elements in their various different permutations. And it was put by an astrologer that the fifth element, spirit, the quintessence, is added to that chart by the interaction of the astrologer and the client.
Hmm.
And
There
that
we go.
energizes the whole thing. And I always like that. So there's always spirits in the chart, and people often say, you know, oh, the Chinese they have an extra element, but actually Western astrologers do as well. It's the interpretation with the client
Yeah,
and the astrologer, you know, it's a context.
that's beautiful. I really like that, because that is what brings astrology alive. And massive side note, important side note, and possibly it's subject for another long discussion on another day, is why I think the statistical tests of astrology repeatedly fail, because
Yeah.
they're attempting to mechanize what is essentially unmechanizable.
They're
Um,
taking a quantity, not quality. And so
yeah, you're looking for statistical, like a proof of, you're trying to slice up water with a pizza cutter. You know, it's just, you need that context to bring any divinatory system alive. The divinatory system and all its rules read like a cookbook, but actually, in order to make that recipe, you need the skill of a cook. You need the, you know, it's, otherwise you're just slinging stuff into a pot and ending up with a slurry. So a lot, yeah. Anyway, so enough mixed metaphors. Hopefully we've answered that thing that wasn't really a question, but I thought it was a
No,
useful subject.
well worth discussion.
Yeah. Fabulous. All right. Well, hope you've, if anyone has watched it to the end, thank you. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please like it, share it. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe, and have a look at our school as well, which will be linked below.
Definitely. All right.
Fantastic. All right. See you next time, Ollie. Thanks. Bye, guys.